when I was asked by Aner and Yael to give a short talk on a central theme in my work, or on some of the topics that occupy me in the clinic, I thought, first of all, of Wilfred Bion, with whom I identify very closely. What? But Bion would not define himself as Bionian. In fact, he would suggest that I forgo all definitions and leave my home, my Heimlich, my canny, and embrace unknown areas in my mind and in my encounters with others. Bion's well-known injunction that we try to arrive at the therapeutic session with no memory and no desire. What Bion suggests is that we come to each therapeutic encounter in a state of a free-floating attention that is not caught up in the structure of the whole picture and can carry being toward nothingness or the erase that I will soon speak of. For Bion, erasure is a creative deconstructive act that offers the possibility of being in an intermediate space where knowledge is suspended. He wants us to embark on each session with a patient like novice, putting aside our knowledge of this person and all the theories we've learned and being totally open to the moment. In his lectures to psychoanalysts in Los Angeles, for example, he suggested that we talk about tomorrow's patient, not the one we saw yesterday, because he's a different patient, like as we are different in every session. In this sense, I would like to say that as an analyst, my home is also to agree to be outside my home, because psychoanalysis is essentially subversive, constantly striving to expand and deepen examination of the unconscious, which of course is infinite. This idea reminds me of the story The Key by Bashevis Singer, whose protagonist, Bessie Popkin, is a lonely old woman who has lived by herself in her safe apartment for years, seldom going out. On one of the rare occasions that she leaves the house, the worst possible thing happens. Oh yeah. She locks herself out of her house and is forced to wander the streets of New York all night. Only then does she meet herself and have meaningful revelations about the essence of life. Excited by what she has learned and understanding now what she missed out on during the 20 years she locked herself in the house, she passed away. I think she passed away a happy person then. A happier person, a vivid and live person. So first of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation. With all of you, I feel it's very fruitful and very meaningful for me. So I didn't think so before, that it will be so meaningful. Because I think it's an unusual opportunity for me to expand my mind, our minds, and I'm happy about it. To return to Bion, we might say that the beauty of this workshop is that we don't know what will happen here. This is, after all, the essence of being, which offers the possibility of transformation and emotional truth. This might also be the place to say a few words about myself before moving to my short talk I have called No Thing and Painting, which deals with the concept of erasure in psychoanalysis and in art. Okay. The question of what is a home and does it have to be a fortress is an important issue. As an analyst, I deal extensively with traumatic and primitive mental states that classical interpretation fails to reach or to help heal. I write a lot about trauma, including incest and dissociation, and I found an interdisciplinary approach to be central to my work with these issues, which are largely wordless experiences. I have written about the musical reverie, about haiku poetry as a framework that helps to contemplate the therapeutic technique, and about the muse, and edited the book Crisscross Psychoanalysis, Art and Culture. Recently, I have also been working with my friend, Professor Orit Taubman-Ben-Ari, on articles that I believe are innovative. They relate to dissociation in transition to motherhood, combining quantitative and qualitative analysis alongside clinical case studies. In my opinion, the concept of erasure, which I will address, can help us think about the concept of a home, and maybe will shed another kind of light on the workshop. So I'm starting. Is erasure of memories possible? What existed before the erasure and what has remained afterwards? I'll say just that this paper won recently the Hyman Prize from the International Psychoanalytic Association for Holocaust studies. So it's about Holocaust. Okay. Is erasure of memories possible? What existed before the erasure and what has remained afterwards? In what way are the two related? I will discuss the concept of erasure in the arts and in psychoanalysis and examine its connection to the phenomena of disassociation. I will further draw a distinction regarding pathological dissociation between a dissociation where a certain link between different states of consciousness have been preserved, whereby the individual feels phantom pain, and a dissociation whereby the symptoms are not linked directly to post-trauma, are less accessible for processing and analytic work, and are as a whole sensorial and primal. I will employ Bion's distinction between no thing and nothing, and compare the technique of pentimento and fresco in the arts for the purpose of better defining the differences between various kinds of erasures in the sphere of the psyche. Art in the shadow of the Holocaust strives to represent the unrepresentable. To the extent that it is often propelled toward erasing the memory it seeks to express. Drawing any kind of delight or horror, Adorno said, of course, that to write poetry after Auschwitz is barbaric. Drawing any kind of delight or horror from the representation of the unrepresentable is a heinous act. While at the same time, the drive to erase might also be viewed as barbaric. The growing phenomena of Holocaust denial seeks to eradicate this horrific trauma from the records of the human consciousness. The meaning or lack of same attributed to the Holocaust is no less horrifying than the actual event. The question is, therefore, is it possible at all to represent, recount, and bear it as a memory in the arts as well as in the psyche? The artist Chaim Maor claims that the creative journey deals with the psychological baggage, the emotional and conscious encumbrance artists bear. As the son of Holocaust survivors, the source of my pain painting, or the wound that begins my story, I quote, of course, originate in the number 78446, that was tattooed on the forearm of my father, David Moskovich, when he arrived at Auschwitz-Birkenau in 1942 with the transport of the Ploensk Jews. Maor maintains that an artistic work based on biographical content is committed to a greater extent to the creative process than to a biographical truth. Thus, the artistic manipulations, coverings, camouflages, and concealments are the fundamental necessities of the artistic work. For an artist who is a child of Holocaust survivors, these artistic techniques precisely reflect references made to the war by their parents. The discourse, if indeed there was one, was characterized by the sophisticated use of covering, camouflages, and concealments in order to provide the child this opportunity to grow up in a healthy environment. In one of his self-portraits, Maor is depicted with a hole, I'll show it, with the hole at the center of his head. It is the hole which represents everything that was hidden from me about the Holocaust, one which has become a black hole over the years and constantly draws me in. The pentimento technique and the earlier fresco may be linked to two phases of psychological development. Pentimento derives from the verb to repent, and denotes a turn or act of correction during the process of painting. The use of oil paints allows the painter to re-evaluate the work through the process of painting, thereby allowing for changes during the time before the oil dries. The earlier fresco technique, by contrast, compelled the repenting painter to remove the thick layer of whitewash and plaster. The pentimento is often hidden and is exposed over the years as the paint gradually becomes more transparent, revealing a detail underneath the upper layer. The pentimento enabled not only a new dimension of time during the painting process, it also permitted the artist to actively and dynamically repent and correct. Hence, the painter is open to changes and deviations from the pre-planned sketch, and is, in this way, regrets, modifications, corrections, and erasures are absorbed in the actual act of painting. The act of erasure in art may reflect something about the act of erasure in the psyche. Similarly, it also leaves threads, and part of our work as analysts is to follow them. Psychoanalysis has been engaged from its early days with different mechanisms of absence and concealment in the psyche. Bion makes a distinction between nothing, which never existed, and no thing, which exists in its absence. Something that existed and is lost and leaves a void. People who experiences the nothing have no idea that something is absent, although they might feel they lack something and in turn agonize over it and become depressed and numb. A person who is experiencing the no thing is likely to seek therapy as a result of symptoms associated with post-trauma. The lost subject created a void, leaving a sense of emptiness as well as a partial notion of loss. Hence, do the erased aspects of the painting or memories, as blank as they may be, enfold both the erased and the absent. In other words, do they represent nothing or the no thing? These are memories associated with phantom pain. Specifically, a person feels pain but is unable to pinpoint its source. In this sense, there is a delicate thread linked to a traumatic memory. This is a kind of a no thing, with an access path which manifests itself according to the traditional definition of post-trauma, flashbacks, overstimulation, night terrors, etc. Yet there are traumatic memories which originates in the nothing, fragments of the absent, and of everything that could not be registered in the psyche, and results in a memory loss. There is no thread, no access path, no phantom pain, and nothing that testifies that anything at all happened. A person who experiences the nothing describes emptiness, a void, or causing the analyst to encounter through projective identification and the non-experience, which constitutes the relic of what happened but has not been registered and experienced. I'll go quickly to Gilad Ophir and then a clinical example. I quote Gilad Ophir. It was 1986, USA, the last year of my studies. I live in New York. At that time, I found myself spending many hours on trains going to different places, such as Philadelphia, New Jersey. The American train is fast and has a mix of businessmen, tourists, women, and children. The ride is smooth and silent. Through the window, the sights go by quickly, making it difficult to concentrate on a single thing. The ride is getting long, and I decide to take photographs. I quickly take a picture. The camera enables me to hold the picture still. Everything is slow. I can concentrate. While looking at the changing sights, I observe different scenery. The view changes in front of my eyes, becoming black and white. I feel as if I'm experiencing a transformation, or, in my view, a transfer of time and space. For me, it was the movement of the recognition. Gilad Ophir continues. As I was looking at works that I had previously made, I suddenly saw, it's this hour of the day, right? Yeah? We know something about memory and desire now. I suddenly saw them in a different light. I was engaged in many things, in exploring photography, the possibility of creating something new. I don't think about the Holocaust or about memory, but I was thinking that the camera film remembers, and that intrigued me. The camera film remembering. Over several years, I developed a way to talk with different layers on a single photograph, repeatedly adding layer upon layer, light and shadow. In my mind, I was engaged in art, language, materials, and images that interested me. This dimension that I refer to is always at work. I don't have to do anything. It will always find its way in. Ophir takes photos of the rays of light falling on the train of New Jersey, or Auschwitz. You can see both of them here. Akin to a flash of light of the memory of trauma amidst the daily routine. It is an erased memory, without any details or sequence. The nothing, the black erased segment, is the only viable something that can be held. The absence allows representation. It represents an opening toward the potential presence. Much is the same manner that representation is paradoxically by nature, as one acknowledged through it one's own sufficiency to oneself. So is the nothing, the absence delineating a contour, a certain framework for the white sorrow. I can envision Gilad Ophir talking about the picture revealed to him with its erased segment in the middle to his audience or to his analyst. I would like to think that the erased segment serves as a starting point, acknowledging it, while at the same time bearing its uncertainty, the impossibility of reaching its roots. To mourn over it, we can mourn over it together in psychotherapy. I would like to propose this, that in cases where trauma causes phantom pain, the living past emerges during the encounter between the patient and the analyst. However, in traumatic states with a total erasure, it appears that even our ability as analysts to be attentive to the subterranean communication is damaged to the point of erasure. In these states, the aim of analysis might not be remembrance, but instead the yearning of the psyche to be contained, regulated, and collected as a cohesive self by another. In such stated, Steiner proposed, one seeks to be understood and not necessarily to understand. In severe trauma states, it appears that along with the desire to separate the daily reality from the traumatic event by means of disassociation, there is also a need to erase the traumatic experience itself and its mental registry from daily memory. Thus, the event becomes frozen in time, impossible to be remembered and processed. In cases where the erasure mechanism is pathological, one strives to erase the very essence of the trauma, to delete the traumatic experience, its mental registry, and testimony regarding the erasure, in much the same manner as we delete a computer document. However, as every computer technician knows, deleted documents can almost always be recovered. Specifically, I think it is the links that are deleted, but not the actual information. I'll say just this. I think paradoxically, the more the psyche strives to erase erase the event, the deeper it is imprinted. Erasure itself can constitute a symptomatic testimony of an event, of a non-event, or a non-event. The revelation of the nothing or the non-event, the emergence of the whole in the texture, turns it into a something. There is a whole, there is a nothing, and there is a no thing, which is a something. Bringing them to the fore enables contact with the hidden, wounded areas, offering a hope for transformation. I will go to the Australian analyst Esther Fay, who was interviewing a woman she referred to as Anne, whose mother was a Holocaust survivor. This case demonstrates an erasure of the links between dissociative traumatic memories, which were frozen in time without symbolization. Erased and absent as they may be, however, these subterranean links between traumatic memories remain deeply imprinted in the psyche and unconsciously manage life in the present. And became the interview by saying that she was highly doubtful that the Holocaust had had an effect on her life. Subsequently, she recounted the story of her mother and family members who were sent to Auschwitz, put in what she called cages, and were kept waiting like sheep being led to the slaughter. All the while, fighter jets were flying above. At this point, Anne insisted that she was by no means affected by the Holocaust, and that she disapproved of the tendency of survivors, children, to associate all of their difficulties in life with the Holocaust. Immediately afterwards, Anne became very shaken and agitated as she began to tell a story which took place at a restaurant that she and her family had once visited as tourists. She went to the back of the restaurant where they were sitting, and much to her horror, it was in the east, And much of her horror she saw animals in a cage awaiting to be slaughtered. She recounted the scene in great detail, adding that airplanes were flying in the sky. At this point, Faye highlighted the connection between Auschwitz scene and that of the restaurant. Anne's encounter with the caged animals before their execution was probably the first time she experienced her mother trauma. Specifically, up to that time, the trauma had been registered in her psyche but had not been processed or experienced. She was able to face this trauma only when it was removed from the original context. The horror that emerged, the phantom pain for that matter, constituted a thread of a trauma that linked the restaurant episode with the core trauma of Auschwitz. The link, however, remained erased. Traumatic memories, or pathological dissociation, demand from the analyst, in my view, a different technique of processing. I think it's very different from the classical psychoanalysis, the Freudian, Freudo-Kleinian point of view. In order to summon the traumatic memories that remained unprocessed, we must unveil unbearable traumatic areas, unreceptive to either words or traditional interpretation. During analysis, there is often a similar transition in the psyche from the fresco technique to the pentimento, when patients are able to acknowledge their erasures and become attentive of their willingness and the possibility of reparation. The willingness to uncover various layers of paint in the psyche presents the possibility to create and to change. The patient is not a blank board and needs us to assist in finding his particular colors and textures. And he has a lot of textures, in my view. His need is connected to our ability to be in the nothing, all the while searching for fragments of life inside the nothing. And I think it's an active approach in a way, because we are looking for something in a very Bionian way, because we feel that we should do it, or I don't know how to put it, without an active point of view, but we should strive to meet something without memory and without desire. So it's paradoxically. In these cases, we must create a containing environment for the patient, one which remembers and maintains for him the pathways and the divergences of his psyche with its many erasures, uncovering the restoring lost, erased memories, rendering the nothing and the no thing into something viable, offers the opportunity to evolve and transform and hopefully live life to the fullest.